Over the course of the Intro to Mass Media class, a great number of pieces constituting a large puzzle of knowledge have been collected and put into place. The following video is an overview of some of the major concepts and themes that we learned about over the duration of the quarter.
We are currently in the digital age of technology and media, having gone through the oral, written, print, and electronic eras previously. High culture is considered to be sophisticated and superior compared to low culture, which is popular with the general public. High culture works are typically reserved for the social elite. Some examples of high culture are Hamlet and Beethoven, and some examples of low culture are Kim Kardashian's paparazzi coverage and the Real Housewife shows. Americans have become independent and individualistic over time, which is reflected in their habit regarding the consumption of media and rejection of community values. We as individuals seek out narratives to consume and unravel in our heads and typically enjoy media that contains complex storytelling due to the fact that throughout all of human history, we have told stories to each other to relate a variety of messages. Our desire to consume stories affect all forms and genres of media, from traditional books to radio programs to television shows and movies, all the way to the variety of content on the internet. Whether they be videos or blog posts, our media is also a reflection of our national and cultural values, including political culture and attitudes common to the day.
Transmission of communication, the SMCR model. Senders transmit messages through a channel to a large group of receivers who finally interact with the message as the sender intended. Gatekeepers filter the messages before they reach the receiver and also receive feedback from the receivers in the form of calls, emails, web postings, talk shows, or letters to the editors. Today, in the digital era, the SMCR model is not perfectly linear. Instead, there are a variety of ways that a message can reach the receivers. The SMCR model is so commonplace in everyday life that we hardly give it a second thought when we utilize it to obtain our media from the creators of said media.
The critical process is paramount in consuming media in an informed manner. The process includes describing a message or piece of content and then analyzing, interpreting, and evaluating and engaging with the message using newfound knowledge.
Media in the world has always been undergoing the process of convergence, or the overlapping of new and old technologies, that modifies or disrupts the current order of media creation and distribution. Sometimes the process of convergence is extremely slow. For example, it took many centuries of writing books before the printing press was created to dramatically speed up the process and make books available to the general public. Later, the printing press was continuously improved, and eventually books were a common commodity that still are omnipresent in our society. Another example of convergence is the more recent innovation of having books be available for purchase and consumption on electronic and digital devices. The same content can be found on an entirely new platform. Modern examples of convergence are abundant in our society, as the internet is host to not only e-books, but also radio, television, and other miscellaneous forms of entertainment that previously were not so widespread and easy to have access to. Convergence is also prominent in the music and recording industry, especially in the form of distribution. The internet is a driving force for nearly every modern innovation and is extremely young when compared to other mass mediums, especially the millennia-old medium of books. Television, radio, and the internet are all certain creations of the 1900s, and it is amazing to think that the majority of our media content that we as a society interacts with on a daily basis is found on platforms that are barely a century old, if not younger. The origins of many government regulatory agencies came about in response to the technological innovations of the early 1900s. that gave rise to radio and telephone companies, which for the first time were able to broadcast the news and other happenings to mass media audiences live. Many of the companies created, such as the RCA, were essentially government corporations with powers comparable to a monopoly. New regulations had to be created to control these large corporations that are still being debated today in the political world. In recent times, the Telecommunications Act of 1996 did away with many previously standing regulations and gave even more power to media conglomerates in the form of legal permission to expand. Now the media in the United States seems to be under control of an oligopoly, as only a few firms have dramatic influence and power over entire industries. Today, with the widespread effect of the internet on the convergence of media technologies, many content creators, centers of the SMCR model, have been forced to narrow their content to cater towards specialized niches because it is difficult to regain a large and diverse audience given the landscape of media ownership and attention span of consumers.
The advertising industry, much like the music industry, has adapted to survive and thrive in the culture environment of convergence, thanks in large part to the internet for allowing new avenues and locations for advertisements to be placed. Although many people have the ability to skip the majority of ads on television through fast forward features on DVRs or by using subscription streaming services like Netflix, some ads, such as product placement in the middle of a show or pop up ads on a website, are more difficult to avoid. Although the average person wants to save time and doesn't like to be forced to watch ads, ads are necessary in order to keep free content from going behind a paywall. And unless consumers are willing to pay for a premium service, then advertisements must be watched. With advertisements and corporate greed abound, consumers of the general public increasingly rely upon journalists to get their news, although it is difficult sometimes to determine if certain journalists or media outlets are responsible and following a code of ethics, or if a conflict of interest is present. Not all news in not all news is for the public good. However, its outlets such as TMC have an unhealthy obsession with celebrities and gossip, which objectively contributes to the dumping download of society. The effects of media on an individual are typically not positive ones, although it depends on the quality and content of the consumed media, giving rise to the hypodermic needle theory and the cultivation effect, which state that media shoots potent effects into unsuspecting victims and leading individuals to perceive the world in ways that are consistent with their consumed media, respectively.
Finally, in the age of digital media and the rapid spread of information, legal considerations are more important than ever before. Some elements of the United States social and political culture, such as the right contained in the First Amendment, have always been part of public discourse, but are further affected by the technology and media of the day. Technology and extensive media coverage only serve to reinvigorate debates over privacy, nudity, free speech, and obscenity, in addition to the role of government in censorship or the release of sensitive documents. In conclusion, because of the fact that some form of media or another permeates nearly every aspect of our daily lives, it cannot be overstated how important it is for individuals and society as one cohesive unit to understand the history of media, as well as the simple question, what is media and what role does it play in our lives? Knowing the answer to that simple question is paramount in making informed decisions not only as a consumer, but also a part of society.